Test 1, 2. All right. This special meeting of the Judson Board of Trustees is hereby called to order at 3:32 p.m. Very pleased that you've taken time to join us today in compliance with the State Government Code on Open Meetings. Tonight's agenda has been appropriately posted, and we'll start off with a roll call, please. Wait, I may have to hit proceed here. Okay, there we go. And we have 5 board members present. Ms. Faulkner and Ms. Rodriguez are not here this evening. So we have established a quorum. Ms. Holmes, do we have anyone for public comment? Thank you very much. We're going to rearrange the agenda so that we can move up item 4A, so that the people who are here to address that can handle it. Discussion and take possible action regarding approval of a resolution to use funds from Bond 2016, Proposition 1, for the expenses related to the Copperfield transformation relocation. Dr. Fields.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I have Ms. Davis and Ben here. They wanted to speak about a previous board item that we had brought to the board to take the funds out of the local budget for the fixing of the Copperfield transformer, and they would like to propose another resolution to that. So, Ms. Davis, Mr. Ben, if you'd like to go to that.
Yes, sir. May of 2023, the board approved using local funds for the relocation of the transformer at Copperfield to the tune of about $1,195,000. Now that we're closer to finishing Bond 2016, and we really haven't incurred those expenses yet, but are about to, we are proposing taking those funds out of the remaining funds in 2016 and using that in addition to an additional $400,000. Now that we're going to begin the work of relocating that transformer, Copperfield's going to be down for several weeks, 2 weeks. Hopefully, more or less, that's what we're predicting. And so in order to keep that running, it would be an additional $400,000 in the expense for the generators plus the fuel. And so we are proposing to the Board of Trustees to take that out of Bond 2016 from the remaining unallocated funds to the tune of $1,595,000 total.
Is there any discussion? Okay.
What was the original number?
The original number was $1,195,000, which the board approved in May of 2023. We need to incur an additional $400,000 in order to keep Copperfield running with generators and fuel and all of that stuff. So rather than just using $400,000 out of bond, now that we're closer to finishing and we have those funds available, let's alleviate our local fund and use bond funds for that, is our proposal.
Thank you.
All right. I see no further discussion. Let's go ahead and vote, please. Oh, I'm so sorry. We need to back up. I didn't have a motion. Thank you, Ms. Holmes. Nobody caught me either. Can I have a motion, please? Actually, I'll make the motion. I move that we approve a resolution to use funds from Bond 2016 Proposition 1 for the expenses related to the Copperfield transformation relocation.
Second.
Thank you. Does anyone desire to change their premature vote? No? All right, now we're legal. My apologies.
Yes.
That passes 5-0. Thank you so much. All right. Our next item is discussion items and reports. A, hold team training, hold team building, team of 8, and evaluating and improving student outcomes EISO training as required by statute provided by Moat Casey LLC and the board self-evaluation. Dr. Gibson, can you kind of frame that up for us, please?
Yes, I would be happy to, and thank you
for having me here, and thank you for having other activities later today, because this fits great into my schedule. I will hit the road and get you guys out of here in good time for your evening event. Before, the primary purpose of today is to not look at the scorecard, although I have an updated version of it, but I purposefully asked Dr. Fields to not provide a copy of it because I was worried that if we start looking at the numbers, like we're just all going to get into that. And this is actually at the last meeting, what I had hoped to be able to go through. It just felt right for us to go ahead and dig into the scorecard. So we're a little out of order. That's okay. So this is actually the meeting typically that precedes when we dive into the scorecard. I have no regrets about us digging into the scorecard with the cabinet, because I think that was the right thing to do at that time. We needed to get on into it and take a peek at it, kick the tires on it a little bit.
Sure.
Thank you.
But I want to, and Mr. Macias, I'm going to borrow yours real quickly. We're not going to read every single word on these, but I just wanted you to have this as a reference document. These are the steps of this process, if you will. And we are on step 3, but we technically have moved down to step 4 when we went through the scorecard. So we're coming back up to team of 8, calibrates, team trust, good governance, and support roles. Like that's the step. And we're kind of systems people, and so it's silly for us to be wanting others to use systems and we don't have the process and a system for our process. So here it is. It looks like there's a lot of work left to go, and in some ways there is, but a lot of the heavy lifting is on the front end of this process, and getting the cabinet, to get together and to listen to the board initially, and then to go to work. And Dr. Fields, I just glanced at the scorecard and I can see some work from the last time I looked at it. So now I know why you kind of grinned a little bit and said I emailed you a copy of the scorecard. So you all will continue that work, and then trustees will set the date to come and really dig into that and do another strategic roundtable.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so any questions on the process? I'll let trustees look at that for just a little bit. And this isn't your last time to be able to say, what about this or what about that? Just email whoever Dr. Fields would like you to email. If you see something that's absent.
Me directly is fine, or Ms. Holmes, and then we'll translate.
Betty has my email. She knows how to find me. I'll let you glance at it for just a second. I know Dr. Fields, down in the process somewhere, there was a concept that we haven't hammered out completely, but the concept of a community meeting. I know because of some of the previous work you had done, I didn't feel like that needed to be like the absolute first thing, and especially at the time of the year.
Yes, sir.
But we can go back and
Oh, definitely.
circle back and think about that.
And we'll be putting some together, even most likely over the summer, with our growth and planning meeting as we move forward, so we could combine those.
And I think to have a few feedback loops on maybe the strategic objectives prior to board adoption, if that works into that, I think that's a really good opportunity to say, here's where we are, here's what we're thinking, and have some feedback loops. Dr. Fields, do you, probably at this point, and trustees, it's probably good for you all to hear too, if you want to give me a designee, whether it's Betty or one of the assistant superintendents, to get on a Zoom and flesh out some of these expected outcomes?
I would say one of the assistant superintendents, probably both of the deputies.
Okay, I think
It'll
that's
be Ms.
wonderful.
Davis and Dr. Toppin.
So trustees, I will get with the 2 deputies. It's a little anemic on detail, although we've verbalized a lot of this. How about we get in the process and we'll get some clarity around the expected outcomes, and then the next time you see it, you can just, the second we do that, you can just ship it to the board.
Understood.
And I almost feel like at this point, if this is helpful, trustees will highlight in green as we're progressing.
Oh, that sounds good.
Does that?
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Step do you think we're on?
Yeah, well,
I'm looking at this
it's,
and I'm like,
it's three-ish, four-ish.
About
Yeah,
three-ish,
three-ish, four-ish. And what I would like to do is, like, you can rest assured that this step is completely done.
yeah, like we did SWAT. So
That's right.
yeah,
And so
check
we'll,
some stuff off.
and that'll be green. And I think we'll,
Get a phased version.
and I think we'll even add some language to this because we expanded some of what that step 2 was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll codify in there what we did, and then you'll see it green. Because, I mean, we're at a point in the process where I think after today, we've got like all the baseline and foundational things done. I mean, we got to get on the gas, and
Sure.
we just got to like keep working the process.
We'll have some more data points coming up shortly, hopefully,
Absolutely.
with scores and so forth, so.
Absolutely.
Do we know when schools are coming?
Well, we'll have some of the pass-fails for the end-of-course exams. They should start coming in tomorrow or the day after, but that'll just be for EOCs.
Sure.
And then more of the middle school, elementaries will be next week. And remember, those will just be preliminaries. Yes, you did, no, you didn't. And then we put those into our own database and start calculating our own sub-pops from what we received preliminarily. But the actual taper report wouldn't come out until later this year.
Right.
In November.
So everybody's good with the process check?
Yeah.
Okay. So the next foundational, I guess, construct, and then there's two more kind of broad things to frame the conversation up today. And the reason that I would recommend the board adjourning into executive session in just a little bit is to debrief the board self-evaluation on teamwork trust, which is eligible for executive session. I keep trying to forget the numbers, but it's 551074. Carrie and I don't want to I try to forget all of them, and they come back. So thank you for the opportunity to reinforce it. But I'm looking at this, and I talked about this the last time, that we had decided to build a graphic, and these are the first 2 or 3 items covered in this one document for my agenda that's kind of inside the board agenda. And so the concept here, and see, we're working on mindset work right now. So the mindset of team trust is critical. The mindset of the board in the strategic role, and the tactical team in the tactical role, or the administrative team in the administrative role. And then the last time I was here, I think we talked a little bit briefly, but I really want to anchor to the concept of continuous improvement. Because this is, I think, arguably a 4-year plan, the 24, 25, 25, 26, 26, 27, 27, 28. Typically, I think a 4-year horizon is very common these days. Sometimes districts are extending a 5th year if they feel like there's, we've got a data point we're trying to hit, and let's just keep it in 1 more year. But I'm recommending that 4-year horizon initially. And then the concept here is that I hate to use sport. No, I love to use sports metaphor. I'm apologizing for using a sports metaphor, but it's Ron Washington small ball. Like it's on base percentage, right? Like if we can play the numbers and we can get enough runs will occur. We'll win games if we get people on base. And this scorecard is really, it's like that. It's small ball. And, it's get 3 yards every carry. I'll switch to football now. It's not like the big, pass. Now, I would argue that sometimes the big, beautiful pass is set up by a series of small gains, right? And then you've drawn
Move the chain.
you've moved the chains and you've drawn the free safeties in tighter, and then now you can see if your guy can outrun their guy. So I'm not against the long, beautiful pass, but the game plan here is move the chains. Like and I think I've shared with you in SCUC, I was there 12 years, and it was clearly segmented by 3 4-year horizons. So we would, how far are we going to move the chains on this 4 years? Okay, then we're going to recalibrate, and then how far are we going to move the chains on the next 4 years? And then I tried to retire, and they talked me out of it for one more 4-year, and then we just got this much left to go, this much left to go, this much left to go. But there was that degree of just clarity and staying at a target, if that makes sense. So the point with that today is that we've got to get that target right if we're going to like stay true to it, over time. So this concept of continuous improvement harkens back to TQM, Total Quality Management, Edward Deming. There's a lot of military, I'm pointing at you now, and I could point probably to any number of people in this area. But, the concept with that is based on the PDCA cycle, Plan, Do, Check Act. I think he first said it, Plan, Do, Study Act. I like see, check rather than study, because I think sometimes we can get bogged down in the study. And I'm more of like, let's just look at the data point. And yes, let's talk and let's reflect a little bit. But for educators, sometimes study can mean decades, and so I like.
6 months, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. We're studying it still, no? So I like the check. So and just to be really clear, so what we're doing right now, if you want to think about the first PDCA cycle, we're planning and we're involving others in the planning, including the board, especially the board, not just including the board. Okay, then we'll have the scorecard, and the doing is going to happen. Like the school year's going to start, we're going to have the strategic actions that I just glanced at, and the doing and the acting should 100% be the tactical team, your administrative team. Like you've hired subject matter experts. I'm seeing doctor, right? Like, and they're doctors of education, right?
Yes, sir.
So they're doing the doing and they're doing the acting. What we're trying to build in here is a cycle where the subject matter experts, or SMEs, if you will, calibrate with the trustees on the planning and the checking, if that makes sense. So there's cycles of we're not going, they're going to be looking at data in the cabinet meeting and all of that at any given time, and not just the data, summer data, but your leading measures, right? And I don't know to what extent you've shared leading measures, and there's no right or wrong to that, but we're trying to build a structure where the board, the trustees, the strategic team has agreed with the tactical team on what are the most important lead measures that we should be looking at. Now, they're your experts, so they're going to tell you, we think this, we think this, we think this, but we're opening the door for board feedback, we believe, and we think that's really important. Does that sound about right? This is the measure, and this is why we look at that measure. And then trustee might say, well, I think that is a good measure. I've often thought about, this other measure. So tell me, I'm a trustee now, tell me like why that might be a good measure or why that might not be a good measure, this thing that I have in my mind. And so if we calibrate more often than one time a year
Right.
at the taper report, looking at 2- and 3-year-old data and making current
Correct.
decisions. So if we do this right, the taper report almost just becomes a statutory requirement that we check.
Yes.
Because everybody knows what's going on.
Because that should be such in arrears that and we're so up to date. And I think I told y'all the first time I was here, Mr. Westbrook, if someone from the community comes, do a 10-minute presentation on the taper report. If nobody from the community comes, if it's longer than 1 minute, you have to fire an assistant superintendent tomorrow. Because now that was after several years because it felt so like just to throw it down to first gear and dump the clutch, because we had gotten the board and the cabinet team, out in front of the data. So anyway, does that make sense on the Plan, Do, Check, Act?
So what data are we using if we're not using the taper? We're using amplified testing? Is that what we're looking at?
At this summer, and the scorecard that I did not allow you to see today, because I knew once we went down that rabbit hole, we would never get out of it. But the next time you see this, the next time you see the scorecard, it will include the data points that the team.
We have those data points on here, and it includes Amplify, MAP, some of the BOYs, the MOYs, the EOYs, but the areas that we're using as our long-term outcome measures would be the STAR.
And we get that data in a different format long before the taper
Taper.
comes out.
You would get it monthly, and what we would do is like schedule out out the entire year, and we say this month, like we had been
Yeah.
doing for, years.
Right.
This
You-
month, we're gonna go over math, next month, we're gonna go over English, next month, we're gonna go over
So by the time we
Amplify,
get
and
the taper,
then,
you've already
right.
seen all the taper
Exactly.
data, because when it came out in May, we saw it in June.
Correct.
When it came out in June, we saw it in the end of June, we already saw all of it already.
So okay, perfect. And with your previous work with Lone Star Governance, I think maybe, so it's very, very similar. I think what we're trying to do here that's slightly different is really narrow the focus maybe to fewer measures, more important measures, like
Yes.
the most important, not just like a big laundry list.
Correct.
And this is where other superintendents, like this is the end of the line for them with me. I personally believe that the board needs to give the central administrative team feedback at those data checks. Now, that does not mean, this is the check part, PD, plan, do, check, mean big chart paper on the wall, trustees, what do you want to do?
Right.
It doesn't mean that. It just means trustees, what did you hear from this report? Tell us what you heard. Like you were elected by the community, so how does this line up with what you're hearing in the community? We can't have all 200,000 people that probably live in Judson in one room. So you were elected by them. So we need some feedback. And to me, the tool that we use, and I don't know what the Lone Star Governance, but the tool that I felt best about it was a check report, if you will, like we were giving some leading data from Amplify or MAP or whatever. And then we asked the trustees to literally type in what's a strength of what you heard from the report, what's an opportunity for improvement that you heard from the report, and then what is something that is still unclear.
Okay.
See, the still unclear was one of the most important things because trustees were like, I still don't understand how that data gets to that data. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't see much out of my report,
Oh,
so you'll have to
no,
throw something
It's
at-
okay.
Okay.
So, what I've always gotten from it was that the information comes in, the staff breaks it down, depending on which report it is, or some of them are joined together. They present the information to us, and then based on things that we hear while we're moving around the community or from the teachers and stuff, we see how all that marries together. So, but we are listening to the staff because they're the ones that are doing the work on it in order to help us to understand it.
Yes, ma'am.
And we don't have to go like down to the bare roots of the understanding. The surface is fine.
Correct, and that's well said, and what I'm recommending is on the monthly, if it becomes monthly, and it sounds like it may, on the monthly check-in, that there is a protocol for the board feedback that the board and superintendent agree to. And if we call that strength, OFI, unclear. What's strength? What's an opportunity for improvement? OFI. We actually had T-shirts made at Christmas one time that had a finger saying, "I'm with OFI." So like the opportunity for improvement. I should have pointed it this way. Sorry, Ms. Ryan, but because we listen for yeah. And the unclear was probably the most important tool that we used because if something was still, I'm still unclear. That data says this, but I'm not hearing from the community that lines up with that. So see, that was unclear to a trustee. So we were trying to connect that dot that, you know what?
And the clarification that I seek when I do need some clarification, it will inevitably be because somebody in the community asked me a question, and I want to make sure that when I explain it to them, that I'm giving it to them in a way they're going to understand it.
Correct.
Because I don't like for people to walk away from me going, what is she doing over there? She doesn't even know what
Right.
they're saying.
And you have no shortage of data, right? Like, okay, and we had a great conversation with the cabinet that, it may be even arguably, twice or three times more than enough. I mean, at the end of the day. So, this, I'm going back to Edward Deming. If everything matters in an organization, then nothing matters.
Nothing matters.
And so we've got to crystallize what are the most important dials that we're looking at. Again, I think I used the metaphor of plugging the computer into the iPad in the car. That's too many data points, and only a trained mechanic knows what any of that.
Right.
We need on the scorecard the most important dials that the board and the cabinet are saying, those are the dials we should watch. Now, if we need to do a deep dive and plug it into the computer and do a board report on the data report that goes down into the weeds, we will. But this is really about agreeing to the dials. Column 4, your lead measures, are the dials on the dashboard.
Correct.
That's what we're trying to agree on, the dials on the dashboard.
And we don't want to look at data that's going to mislead us. We want to look at
Correct.
what's crucial to moving us forward.
Correct.
And some of the data is extraneous when it
Correct.
pertains to this particular goal or to this goal.
So if I'm a trustee and I'm sitting here and we're in the strategic roundtable workshop and we're running through the data, I think it would be an appropriate question at any time for a trustee to say, okay, I see that data, how does it lead back to the strategic objective that we adopted?
Yeah, like that's what
Yeah.
I'm always looking for is the so what. I think we talked
Right.
about the last thing is it needs to be actionable data, right? Like, what, okay, here's the data. What are we gonna do about it? We're doing everything great. We're right on glide path. We're not changing anything. It's perfect. Don't touch it. Like, don't
Right.
break it. Or we gotta modify a little bit, or we need an overhaul. All right, what do you need from us? Or you need a policy, you need resources, what, like, tell us as the board what you need. Kind of ending every data set with, okay, what has this taught us?
Right.
And what do you need
And what do we
or
need to work
not
on?
need from
Right.
us?
Tweak.
Which
or
may,
whatever, yeah.
so it may be that at the end of a check data session, that.
We summarize, just like
and
Ms.
it's
Ryan
now
just
what?
stated. Exactly.
Now what?
Right.
Like what are.
So what, yeah.
Right, and the thing, so if we articulate key strategic actions, which you all have them in there,
Mm-hmm.
and they're good, you may tweak the key strategic action
Right.
based on what you're seeing in the data.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Or we
Or
add
we give you resources, or we change a policy, or we do something, unless we're doing amazing and we don't do anything. That's an option too, but.
We have to give the staff an opportunity
Correct.
to make those adjustments
Yeah,
and
tell us what
present
you
them to.
And
that way they
they'll
can
come with
tell-
that
Right.
recommendation
Yeah.
when we're going over the data. If they see something. right?
Correct, that was when we were prepping for the board report, that was my,
Right.
Right.
well, I don't want to be surprised, but every once in a while, and it was Scott Harrod, rest his soul, he would be the one that would say something that we were like, dang it, we should have thought of that. That's a really good idea.
Right.
But
Yeah.
we would say, Mr. Harrod, you have proposed something that we need time to think about.
Sure.
Because you've tickled our intellectual curiosity, so give us some time, sir. And he just grinned, and of course, he was a purchasing person out here at Randolph. So all data.
He knew all that.
day and all night. Look, and yeah, we have bracelets, what will Herod ask? Like that was our board meeting.
But he felt like he was part of the team, because
Well,
good ideas can come from anywhere,
right,
right? They can
and
come
they
from the
were-
community, the teachers.
But he
board.
always viewed it through the strategic lens.
Right.
Like it was always, like the question was always like in the big helicopter question, it's just like, wow, that's, okay. Okay, so what, the purpose of today, yes, sir.
I'm just listening to the feedback, and it's obviously in the right course. But through my time on the board, the place that's probably giving me the biggest hiccup or biggest moment where I have to pause is when I'm on the dais and I'm asking administration, did you get input from teachers? Did you get input from stakeholders before you came forward with the decision so that we know it's well-rounded? Because of course, the tactical team, the cabinet and the superintendent, but as we look through these board goals and establishing superintendent goals, having more pathways for employee engagement in the decision-making process
Yeah.
still brings in that buy-in. So I just wanted a time to kind of just put that out there in the universe, that's still, I think, a very critical piece to ensure we've looked at every angle with a possible solution to it, especially since we're always looking for continuous improvement. There could be some valuable input. And I think that Dr. Fields has done a lot of that, but it's just a matter of making sure that's a value that we continue to hone and keep and nurture and cultivate throughout the district.
I can tell you as we move forward, Mr. Macias, that's one of the first questions that we typically ask, did we check with? What I found is that although you may check with some, you may not have checked with everybody. And when it comes to evaluating the input, someone's going to say, nobody asked me. And we've tried hard to include everyone, but there's always that one outlier that where someone says, you didn't check with me on that because I would have told you that. And it's good input afterwards. And you're like, well, note to self, next time check with so-and-so.
Well, and obviously you can't check with every possible person, but naturally if there's a improvement request for academic performance in the classroom,
You're absolutely
did we
right.
check with the teachers to see what input they've had at Pashal versus what they saw at Olympia?
Well, in another district that you happen to work with, like when they are presenting theirs, like part of their template of what they're briefing is they go over, we held 37 focus groups with parents, we did 2 surveys, we did, like, they tell the board in advance.
This
This
is
is
what we
everybody we consulted, so that in case you're like, oh, but you didn't ask the custodians, or you didn't ask their, like, then we can see who they talk to and feel confident. We're like, okay, looks like you hit all the major groups in whatever way you could.
Right.
I thought that was a great template that I saw somebody
Well,
else
and
do.
it's funny, when you started talking and then you just said it, the thought bubble that came to my mind was focus groups. Like, that's the only way you can systematically with 3,000 employees or
Right.
20 or what, but you just have to make sure that you have a good, I think the right term is stratified random sampling, in the focus groups. And that's, to me, focus groups are the only way to be systematic. And then, yes, are you going to miss somebody? Yes. But at least you can
You may
say,
even have people in the room, Dr. Gibson, that you go over it with, and they just didn't realize what was being gone over
Right.
until afterwards, and they're like, oh, I didn't realize that's what that slide
one of the
meant.
things I had to learn the hard way, and probably some of this gray hair comes from that, is I could hold the focus group, but if I did not summarize the key learnings or the themes that you were just talking about, back out to
Correct.
and make it available to the entire staff, like, this is what we learned and these were the key themes. It's almost like if that didn't come out, it didn't happen.
Correct.
Even though I'd spent hours in focus groups and trying to listen and go through, if I didn't put it back out in writing, and then it turns out there's some research on that Gallup, who makes $1 gazillion a year in staff surveys, says, don't do a survey if you don't share the results in writing. For everybody to see. Like, don't waste your time and money on us, and they're the beneficiary of that money. But you've got to so it's just close the loop, close the loop, close the loop constantly. So that's mindset, and by the way, there's a segue here. So then you move to framework. So in the middle of this journey, we're into framework, and then at your place setting is a document called Systems Check. And there's a network of quality schools logo in the upper left-hand column. So do you all remember looking at the aligned arrows on the graph, and we talked about, are those departments, are they? Well, the more advanced discussion around those aligned arrows, and yes, they're departments, and yes, they're campuses, and yes, they're the key leaders around the table. But we believe in the more advanced discussion that those arrows are these 30 components of quality work. So when we looked at that, we all wanted to be stage 4. So what we put out now, we don't do this on the first meeting because sometimes if we show the systems check on the first meeting, we don't get asked to do a second meeting. Okay, I'm just going to call it like it is. So once you kind of start peeling the layers back, we think these 30 things are the arrows. So we have to get these 30 things going in the same direction. And then, we want to be stage 4, meaning we have well-defined processes and a systematic approach to it. I think what happens in education regularly, and not just education, military, other for-profit organizations, we get a pocket of stage 4, and we're proud of that pocket, but we generalize it to like the whole organization is stage 4. No, just that one piece is stage 4. And our CEO, Bill Gilcrease, likes to say you can't be stage 4 on one process and stage 1 on 29 and call yourself stage 4.
Yeah.
Like you, and that's the hard part. In Dr. Fields, like, I like to say, these are the plates that the superintendent has up in the air. These 30 things, or like.
Only 30.
Only 30.
Well, I mean,
But yeah.
we distilled it.
Sure.
Down to 30. And what made me think about this, if you look at process 17 to Mr. Macias's earlier question, process 18, and process 19, process 20, and process 21, are we listening? Do we have a systematic process for listening and sharing and communicating?
Right.
Okay, so they're part of this. And Dr. Fields, I know I'm just kind of like dropping this here, but as we start to think about the scorecard key strategic actions being more robust than just a description of what we're already doing, maybe done with higher efficacy,
Yes,
to me, these are the things.
got it.
Is that, like, these are the stretch things. And you can't put 3 stretch things as key strategic actions if you're only allowed 3, because you'll blow staff out. That's too much, too fast, too soon, right? I personally think if you're writing 3 key strategic actions for each of the objectives, 2 of them ought to be something you're already doing, but at a higher degree of efficacy, and then 1 of them ought to be the stretch.
Understood.
And it's just like 2/3 of our federal government, like only a third flips over
Sure.
during an election. We leave 2/3 in there. We don't, other than the Texas House, we don't, do an election every single time. And that's purposeful. They want, in the House, you got to go home and live with what the laws you just passed. So I'm not bemoaning that. But it's that same concept of 2/3 holding, steady. I don't want to go down the rabbit trail of the systems check, but does that make sense
makes
for
perfect sense.
everyone?
You know, my brother is a superintendent in Chicago, and one of the things that they do is at the end of the school year, they send out a only three question survey to the parents, and it all focuses on what would you like to see next year.
Correct.
And it's all academia, no sports, none of that extracurricular.
Right, that's process
Focuses
20,
on
21.
academia.
If you look at those, like that is.
20 and 21?
21. Process 21, making sure educational offerings align with external customer needs to the extent you can afford. Like that is exactly what you're describing. Like we're offering this, is it meeting your needs?
Sure.
And there was a time 20 years ago, 20 years ago to 150 years ago, that things didn't move that fast. Stuff moves fast now. And we're not we're the only show in town that statutorily provides free and appropriate education for everyone, but we're not the only show in town anymore.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. We're the only
Oh, yeah.
show in town for some. There's a lot of shows in town. So we've just got to get, and y'all will laugh at this, but when, y'all will laugh that during my time at SCUC, the first charter school came in, right? And it's out by the base, big one, and just everybody panicking. And I'm like, okay, everybody done, panicking and wringing your hand. Somebody go secret shop, act like you're enrolling your kid, and see what they're
Report
doing.
back. Yeah.
And then come back and tell the group. And it's so funny, assistant superintendent came back. I went out, I secret shopped. They're doing this, they're doing this, they're doing this. And by golly, we're going to change it. I mean, and it was like, there you go. I mean, like we went and we secret shopped and we saw something and we took that thing away from them. I'll just tell you. We didn't take everything that they had offered
Right.
away, but there was one of the 5 things they were offering that we took away. And it was low-hanging fruit and cost almost nothing for us to do it, but we took one of their 5 points away.
What was it?
Humanities, more of a humanities approach with the integration of art, history. So we had all the tools right there to just call it
Yeah,
humanities.
just
And we-
repackage it. Yeah.
We just repackaged it to humanities and, right. Well, that's right. Okay, okay, so there, now I just gave away. But, I mean, my point with that was, yes, did they draw down ADA from us? Yes. was there something that we could learn from that and not just only be worried about the ADA drawdown? And I was always worried about the ADA drawdown. Don't get me wrong, like the numbers had to crunch, right? But I always felt like we needed to be paying attention to what those customers are saying. And then we would actually do focus groups from charter parents to ask them why they left.
Yeah, thinking of them as customers,
Huh?
I think is important.
Yeah, why did you leave? And at first, they were coming up like ready to fight, you know, and then it's like, well, no, they really just want to know. Like and I couldn't lead the conversation because they said my position was too authoritarian, you know. So we've got the best PR person we had in the office to lead the focus group, and we learned a lot. And so, I mean, we can't, if they go to John Paul, they're getting cataclysm class. We can't do that by
Right.
law. Okay, so, but is there something else? You know,
Right.
that was part of the decision that we can do something about. So anyway, that's that concept of listening to customers. Okay, I don't want to perseverate on that. And then at the bottom of, so it's mindset, framework, and then tools. And the scorecard is your primary performance management tool. And then there's some others on here. And do you see like listening and learning and those sorts? But the primary tool is the scorecard. So what I wanted you all to think about today as we frame this up, and it, by the way, is a time-honored 30-year best practice. This is the best way to get clarity around your strategic actions and your measures. And it's Kaplan and Norton. I think I've told that to you all before, so look it up. We've stayed true, and we're if the Hoshin model and Kaplan and Norton had a baby, it would be our scorecard, because those are time-honored.
Yeah.
But it's just clarity about what the objective is, clarity about the actions, clarity about the leading measures and what we're going to talk about in this room with limited time. We need clarity about what we're going to talk about, and then clarity about the outcome measure. So, Madam President, that's the overview.
Okay.
Back up to the mindset. Team trust is really critical to this process. And I asked you all to do a quick check mark on a self-analysis. I have those results.
Okay.
That I'm ready to share with the trustees and the superintendent.
Okay, and so that's, go ahead.
Was
Get
this
your
from
mic.
The results from our last
Yeah.
meeting.
2 meetings ago, I believe.
It was
We
one of
didn't
the
get
first
to them the
ones,
last
I think,
meeting.
that we did.
It was one of the first time,
Okay.
maybe the second time I was here. We took the team trust self-analysis,
Okay,
yes.
I thought you wanted us to do it again.
No, ma'am.
Okay.
I've got the results ready to talk about.
So I have a question about the agenda. We already have a closed session item. Can we combine everything into closed session now and do
That-
all that
That is
under
up to
the
you
same?
all.
I want to make sure I do it legally, so go into closed session for this item and the
Is
other.
it a different, are they
It's-
both 551074?
Yes, they're both the
Okay,
same.
This is personnel that we're.
Right.
So I think 551074 covers both of those.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so we will go into executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code, Section 551.074, board self-evaluation, evaluating student outcomes, and also regarding board member duties, roles, and responsibilities. And the time is 4:14. Okay, he's good. Here we go. Nope.
Take our thing.
All right, the board will now reconvene in open session. The time is 6:23. No final action, decision, or vote was taken while the board was in closed session. There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned at 6:23. Thank you so much.
5 hours.